Hey yo, it's your boy Reed. Probably haven't heard from me since I dropped my last mixtape last quarter, but Yo Famous Rapper is back in action. But seriously, as I look back at quarter two, it's kind of hard to remember. The line dividing quarter one from quarter two is somewhat blurred in my mind. However, the growth that I have noticed in myself from the initial quarter to the second quarter is clear. Throughout my evaluation of the reading journal and my self-reflection, I've discovered that I've grown substantially in my reading abilities. When I first read Perrine's The Nature of Proof in the Interpretation of Poetry, I was honestly impressed and a little disgusted by this guy's meticulous attention to detail. For example, when he is explaining how he views Emily Dickinson's untitled poem as a description of a sunset and not of a garden or meadow, he uses a single S to support his point. He writes, "Daffodil would normally be in the plural if it is referred to flowers rather than to colors. Why would not the poet say, on a sea of daffodils?" I wanted to punch this guy, but also bow down to him after he wrote that. It made me so annoyed that one, I didn't come to that conclusion, and two, that something that seems so insignificant, like a little S, could change a whole interpretation of a poem. Honestly, I still get a little heated about it. It's crazy. But as I reflected back on my own reading journals, I took notice of my development and my ability to not only notice important details and fondle them, as Nabokov would say, but also my ability to account for all the details in my interpretation of literary works. So when I first figured out that AP Language and Composition class was starting the women's rights group projects, I was not pumped at all. I did not want to read all these pieces because, selfishly, I didn't really care for the subject. I know, but I'm going to be honest, I did not care for the subject. But as I was forced to read Elizabeth Cady, Stanton, and others, the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions, I began to take notice of all the very important little connections that were made from its paralleling the Declaration of Independence. An excerpt from my reading journal for the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions reads, "By writing in a style that compares the King of Great Britain to the common man, the women are not only making it fit with their structure of parallel, but they are also using logos to show how unjust the common man is being to women." Before this quarter, I would have never come to that level of discovering and understanding the important connections in literary works. I was able to utilize this new ability to discover new details in literary works by including important details in my Unit 2 synthesis essay when I used the comparison between the two previously mentioned works. And it is right here. Stanton and others wrote this piece to not only show the wrong of the selfish male idea that women are lesser beings than men, but also to justify the actions of the women as they protested the unfair treatment of the female population. Stanton and others compared the American males to the tyrant king of Great Britain, the history of mankind having in direct object the establishment of absolute tyranny over her. Through comparing males to the tyrant king, Stanton and others made clear the egocentric and unfair treatment of women in America shown by men. Without my growth in the attention to detail, my Unit 2 synthesis would have been greatly weakened by my lack of support and development of ideas. Another example of my newly improved ability just to notice and account for all details in literary works is from Amanda Hess's "Stop Overanalyzing Hillary Clinton's Hair." When I first read through it, I got the main ideas of the piece, like, from my journal, it is unfair to place opinions and generalizations on someone because of the way he or she dresses. So, kind of like the face value, nothing really deep. But, when I looked back at the piece, I noticed certain phrases that pointed me to discover how the literary work was such a great example of modern day criticism of untraditional actions. For example, Hess states, "But for women, there remains no outfit that will insulate her from the speculation about what her choices really mean." This sentence led me to realize that women that are wearing pantsuits and unfeminine apparel is certain to offend traditional and stubborn people, as these types of clothing have only been around since 1993. Through my growth in noticing details, I was able to reach new conclusions about literary works that I otherwise would have scanned right over. Now, the second area that I have improved greatly in is my ability to analyze symbols and discover the true authorial intent of literary works. Before this quarter, I thought symbols were what you decided they were. You kind of took them for whatever you wanted, and there wasn't any right answer for what they represented. But as I read Perrine's work, and how he basically said that while there can be multiple interpretations, there are ones that are closer to the target, or in AP terms, more center in the beam of the flashlight. I thought, hey, maybe English is not going to be as confusing as I previously thought. Maybe there's some less gray area, more cut and dry. But, however, I still found it confusing. But now, I don't shy away from evaluating symbols just because I figure it doesn't matter or everyone has their own opinion. Now I grab the proverbial bull by its horn and wrestle the meaning out of its symbolic shell. And if they know Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter, there's a boatload of symbols. When I first read through the book, my evaluation of symbols was absolute garbage due to my lack of care for what the symbols really meant. Here's an example of... Oh, it's in here. Oh, here we go. Symbol of the rosebush. Something positive comes out of negative. The rosebush symbolizes there's beauty among the Garbo town, slang for garbage, and now it symbolizes survival. And then I end it with a killer line, I don't really know. So you can see, it wasn't that great, but as I went back and reevaluated the symbols more closely, mainly because I was required to for an assignment, but I still went back and reevaluated, I was able to come up with a much better explanation for many of the symbols in the book. Then, in our class discussion, my ideas for what the symbols meant were reinforced. And here's some of my explanations for the symbols in the Scarlet Letter. Journal. Oh. So, some symbols. Here's a symbol for the prison door that I wrote. The prison door was a symbol for the Puritan Society's ideals / values, like punishment and justice. And then I also made a connection with the door was strong, powerful, and just like the Puritans, like rock-hard belief in their punishment and justice. And here's one for the Scarlet A that I wrote. The Scarlet A symbolizes the sin of adultery, but it also is a symbol of Hester, as she embraces the A. She doesn't become the A becomes her. See, laying the hard-hitting lines out. But clearly one can see the great improvement from my lesson subpar evaluation for symbols to my most recent. Another piece that shows my growth in being able to determine the true authorial intent of a piece from a main man Ernest Hemingway's Indian Camp. Let me say off the bat that I went into this piece with a poor attitude. Supposedly I had to infer the 7/8 of the iceberg, and I didn't really feel like applying myself. But as I read Indian Camp, I didn't really apply myself, and I came up with subpar inferences for the symbols, just for all the inferences for the whole story. But hold on, there is a silver lining to my laziness. When I came to class and we began our class discussion on the piece, the hamster in my head started working. I came up with, by myself, a reason for why Hemingway had Native American male on the top bunk and the pregnant wife on the bottom bunk. And it is right Oh, here we go. It symbolizes the dominance that the man had over his wife. For example, a man being on top during sexy times. I don't know why I wrote that. It also showed ownership because it is an unwritten law that the top bunk is the best bunk, and all the rest is literally and figuratively below it. I also figured out how Uncle George's giving of cigars represented his celebration of the dawning fatherhood. But the class discussion is what really brought to light how much more there was in the story that I hadn't inferred. But I'm so glad that I've improved in my ability to determine authorial intent, because it gives me a lot more appreciation for the author, like Ernest Hemingway. And it also makes me feel really smart when I come up with something that fits the literary puzzle. Even though, sadly, this is my last quarter of AP English with you, I'm glad I was able to do these quarterly journal conferences. It is encouraging to evaluate oneself and see how one has improved in various ways, when honestly I feel like sometimes I'm still garbage at English. But I see through these journal conferences that I have improved. I've learned so much these past 2 quarters, more than I've learned all of high school English, and more specifically this recent quarter. And I am pleased that I have improved in such a useful area as English. Read out.